I've got all my printing and everything ready to go, right? So at the minute, we are working through the like Digital and Video Games Research Association's reading list, which is amazing. So, for example, let's just say you're going to do a PhD in neuroscience, right? And you got a professor who's supervising your work, and you never see them, and you're like, well, what should I be reading? What should I be learning? And then you come across, like, I don't know, like Andrew Huberman's reading list that he's just given out to podcast subscribers. As a PhD candidate in neuroscience, it's like probably wouldn't be a bad idea to read Huberman's list, right? And so the Research Association is kind of like, at the minute, the most organized research body on video games outside of the research, in my opinion, that's being conducted by developers and video game companies themselves. So we got printing, and I'm working through their reading list. This week, though, we chose the games based on our games direction, and I'll show you the slide for that. We've got our reading started, right? So I got it all printed. I got them there. We've got a reading group session this afternoon that I'm going to join the Zoom, and I'm not going to really be an active participant this time. I'm just going to listen. As well as we had about, 100 old tabs open, and I had been perusing them sporadically over the past few weeks. The intention was to cite them all and stuff, and well, we had that catastrophic failure on stream with audio, right? Basically, what happened was all the audio went kaput. I just made some changes, and I've come to learn a better process of making those changes. Yeah, let's just put it that way. And let's just say, impact-wise, if you were not a professional streamer, you would be rushing out to buy a new computer because you wouldn't know what to do. But I know what to do. Good morning, Gratz. So I got it fixed in a couple of hours. But if you're an ordinary streamer, you're not going to have a guy like me come through and just fix all your stuff. So when that happened, we lost all our old tabs, and I just kind of chalked it up to fate. I was like, okay, those tabs were never really meant to be super duper. And let's face it, they weren't necessarily academic either, right? It was just stuff that we were reading. Gaming wise, this week, we got our second sub 10 in Hades. And I'm also going to say 50-50 on Multiverses, right? So I was thinking about having Multiverses in the PhD study as part of our fighting games component. And I didn't really think about how the game was in comparison to other games. So I'll unpack it when we get there. Stream-wise, there's basically no stream news, right? Since we made the decision to only stay in the watch party other category and to never update the stream title and to stop going around and being a good chatter, all channel growth is dead, right? And that's fine. That just goes to show that all the growth prior was just about me putting myself out there. And I'm glad that I did, because it shows that if you're a kick streamer and you have just a minimum quality level and you put yourself out there, you can get traction and you can grow and you can go on the front page and all this stuff. And this kind of stuff is not really my interest. You know what I mean? I like what I'm doing here. So yeah, stream's kind of dead. We were thinking about everything that we're going to do post-kick, right? I can say, though, that one thing about just playing the games on stream is that I did have some challenge with balancing the fuller games, so games that take 40 hours to beat. So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I was very enthusiastic about being able to do Red Dead. I've got it installed, but I have not been able to play it, right? I thought I could cruise through Yakuza and Red Dead at the same time. And I'm just finding with the way that I play and the way that I'm playing, I'm not really doing that, right? So I do have some kind of like understanding for the bigger streamers, well, the biggest streamers who choose to block out a segment of time and just do the game, right? So Elden Ring is probably the classic example at the minute. Everybody who is, like that top percentile of streamer, they're just taking a week or 2 weeks to play Elden Ring. I don't know, they're probably all getting deals through their management, from Bandai, from Soft, to get more exposure for Shadow of the Erdtree. Now, why? Why would you need to do this? Why would you need to rely so heavily on influencer marketing? Well, we know based on was it the Deloitte? I'm quoting the head of games from Twitch who shared this on LinkedIn. Basically, people were saying, like, consultants were saying that Gen Z and onwards will make significant purchasing decisions based on influencer marketing, right? And that includes the socio illusion of friendship with the streamer, the whole parasocial aspect, right? So let's just say, I'm Rival Gaz, well, I'm Gary Lee, and I play the persona, I play the character Rival Gaz on stream. And then people are like, Rival Gaz, my best friend, or whatever. And they see me playing Elden Ring, they might want to play Elden Ring too. Yeah? It's just like that simple. People see me playing Multiverses, people are going to go in and install it. It's just how, marketing is kind of working today. We're just seeing the word of mouth, but digitally, I suppose. Anyway, I kind of forgot where I was going with this, so let's just move on. Effectively, no stream news, but I can say, though, like yesterday, I was remarking about how once we have our 2,000 hours done, now let's just check out stream charts to see if this is updated and we're getting any closer or not. It has. So we are at 1551, all right? So 450 hours to go. Once we hit our 2,000 hours, there's going to be like no push to be streaming full time anymore, right? We did it, completed, done. We've done Twitch full time, we've done Kick full time. It's just the other giants left, if we want to do Valve or Steam streaming, if we want to do YouTube streaming, if we want to go and do Facebook streaming. I am tempted to do Facebook streaming for a few reasons. First is that in my town, Facebook is king, right? People really believe in the people. It's not like in America where the moniker, the username persona that you adopt is just an extension of you and not really you. Like the whole sock puppet idea, the whole like, well, let's look at it the other way, where users of platforms are like happy to 100% be real and be who they are in real life with the moniker as it suits them until they're no longer comfortable with it. And then it's just scorched earth. The account's gone, blah, 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 never existed. Right? There's really interesting psychology and user behavior observed. Anyway, moving right along. Starlight Prep Scuff yesterday did ask about these character sheets, right? And that's what I was thinking about as like the story for season 3. I can admit I was being like very creative and everything else. But I'm also just happy for season 3 to be the start of like my journey into the PhD, which it is as well, right? I'm not saying I'm abandoning this idea. I'm just saying like we've still got time to get this done. Maybe like next month or after after we find out about the PhD scholarship, right? So we applied for a scholarship earlier on. Was that here? Yeah, in week 12, right? In week 10 of the PhD. So, for the recap, and what happened was basically, well, let's just go back to this slide. Had the opportunity to get myself back in the fight for a stipend or stipend, depending on how you want to say it, right? It's just a very small allowance below the poverty line. Probably, it's a little bit more generous than Social Security, right? Which I don't receive either. I don't get anything, actually. Nothing at all. I just survive on air. So it would be great to get it, but it doesn't really matter if we get it because we never had it in the first place. The heartbreaking part of it was the whole handshaking and, I'm the boss, so you're getting it. And thank you very much for bringing your work here. And then to get here and then effectively be deceived is just a crying shame, but it is no different to effectively the majority of experiences I've had at the university here. Note experiences that local people, Territorians, really had no involvement in. So just people who are not from here coming here, meaning to serve Territorians, and then, in my experience, prioritizing people like themselves. So let's just move through the slides as we always do. I added a little bit more into this. I did come across a concept today called, I think it's called ludonarrative dissonance. It talks about, and I can't remember who said it, right? But it's on the internet. Basically, the idea that there's an experience or a way of knowing the game as it's written and made, and that tells a story. But then there's a way of knowing the game and the story, which is different based on how you play it, right? And that's very interesting to me. And I feel like this dissonance, there's something more here to unpack, which could effectively serve as a gateway or serve as a connection to help me argue this eliteness concept as being intrinsic to the game or something that is extrinsic to the game that is brought in, right? My reading approach, so we've got it. We've got all the printing and stuff. I just have to get myself into the habit of doing this. And when I reflect on my play over the past couple of weeks or over the 12 weeks, because I've got it all there, I definitely feel like I have the time allocated to my gaming for the game or the games that I'm interested in and that I have available to me. So what I'm saying is we've got the gaming time, but I need to make sure I've got the reading time and I need to make sure that I have the writing time. So, I only have the time that I have in the day and I can spend more time on it, right? However, it's you got to make this, you got to draw a line in the sand type of thing about how much time you're going to spend and when you're going to spend it for 3 reasons. The first is that you're in a research training program, right? And so the expectation is 38 hours full time. No more, no less. The second thing is that you have to spend the time anyway, right? So unlike a lot of PhD candidates who simply pretend to be working 38 hours a week on their PhDs, and I know that's going to really hurt, but you know who you are. You know who you are, right? You know who you are. Uh, I'm on camera. That's my time. So I'm legit. It's about saying you're going to spend even more time on this. And the answer is no. No more time is needed. It can be done. It's not one of these PhDs where it's life consuming. And I'm certainly not being paid to make it life consuming. And nobody cares. Nobody cares, right? Nobody cares whatsoever. And that's fine by me. So no more time needs to be spent on it. What needs to happen is, like I said, I've got all the footage I can look back. So, when it comes time to writing, we've got the time. We just got to chop parts off. When we get into the games part and we talk about what games might feature in the study, we've got to get those games and then play them. And if we can't squeeze them all in, we got to cut away stuff. Same with reading and writing, as well as all the administration and everything else that goes into the PhD. And, once we've done our 2,000 hours here, 4,000 hours in total streamed, we will be about, I'm just going to say, like, well towards halfway for that hidden internet hypothesis about success in streaming. Basically, there's this old website, and old Twitch heads will know about it. I can't remember what it's called, but basically, they had an abundance of streamer data and they just made their own statistical inferences off of it. Basically, saying that creators will make or break or peak around the 7,000 hours streamed. So, correction, I misspoke. Around the 7-year mark of streaming, right? And if you know the thing I'm talking about, we know that it's flawed because it is data that captures the first 7 years of Twitch, when it was basically not going gangbusters, but you just had to be around. But you had to be around in a way that was accessible to Twitch, right? So think about the first 7 years of Kick if they can keep it going. No point being on Kick day one and streaming here full time 7 years if you are not accessible to the people of Kick. You're just wasting your time, right? Unlike most streamers out there who are doing streaming full time for streaming. Like, streaming full time for me is it's just the expression of my PhD. If I chose to do my PhD on surfing, for example, I wouldn't be here. I'd be at the beach, living on the beach. But I don't really know where exactly in Australia. I would probably go to Southeast Asia. And I could have done that, but I chose to do gaming instead because it was cozy and I could just keep doing it here. Anyway, moving right along, right? The timeline, I feel like it's important for the story of the PhD. If you watch last week's update, then you're going to know that a lot of this is very similar. But if you didn't, now you're going to know. We changed this from numbers to compass directions to make it more accessible as an idea. Basically, to explain the idea, I have a couple of layers of considerations for the games that I'm going to be studying and why. You don't just pick the game. I think if you just go and pick the game, then, well, I'm unimpressed. Moving on. So we have the forms of play as the north direction. Basically, this is to say that games are games. They have rules. They have ways to be played. The forms of play is to say that you're going to play that game in a different form, in a different way. Right? And I'm all for it. So that means you're going to mod the game. You're going to be playing the game, looking for different things. This is kind of like if you take Pokemon and people are looking for glitches and shinies. They're not interested in collecting screenshots of characters saying cheesy lines for memes, runners and trophy hunters and things like this. East is the versus the competitive type of games, so racing games or collaborative games, you know. Oi, what the fudge, dog? MMOs, your royales, your arenas, your MOBAs, all this kind of Stokes. Cut it out, mate. Platforms in your southern direction. So your handhelds. Is it on PC or now like the distinction between a PC that is a handheld? Always was, but whatever. Consoles, cloud gaming, analog games, augmented games, purely virtual games, so on and so forth. And finally, Sims and Serious. So, simulated sports, semi-educational games like Roblox, Rec Room, semi-utility games like Command Air and C, games that are meant to impart something to, unlike other games where we kind of do an exegesis to find additional meaning and things like this, right? So what are the games then? When I was thinking about it, I ended up on like three kind of buckets, if you will. Franchises, and I'll color the developers and the publishers, and the platforms. Nowadays, though, platforms are appearing to be less determinant of what is going to be an elite game nowadays. So that's why that kind of column is like blank. But franchises seem to be where all the action is at. And there are so many franchises with so many games about that franchise. And so it's like, think about Harry Potter as a franchise. And if you were going to do an analysis of Harry Potter, but you only stuck, right? You only stuck to the books. Well, let's just say that Harry Potter came out over a 10-year period, right? Well, what if your analysis of Harry Potter was only about the original paperbacks in terms of how enjoyable Harry Potter is to read? But over that 10-year period, you had totally new ways of reading Harry Potter. What do you mean? Harry Potter coming out on an iPad, Harry Potter coming out on a Kindle, Harry Potter coming out in brand new high glossy paper with illustrations. And if your research was just on how enjoyable Harry Potter was in the paperback form, well, and you ignore the temporal element of what's going on, I'm going to say that yes, you did your study, but from an intellectual point of view, you've missed all these other parts. And what does that mean for something like Pokemon or whatever, or Fortnite or Multiverses or Blizzard's craft games or Counter-Strike, Valve, things like this? It's like these franchises have a lot going on over many different platforms, right? And they also work with different developers, but they also have many different games in that franchise. So I was wondering, like, what particular game am I going to kind of choose? And what's fascinating is that Fortnite, for example, has characters from many different franchises in the game of Fortnite. And in the game of Fortnite, there's many different ways to play Fortnite and many different game modes. It's effectively the one game to rule them all, because you don't really need to play other games if all the other games and their game modes are in Fortnite. But I'm not saying that Fortnite has like tower defense or a Helldivers mode or whatever, right? All I'm saying is that Fortnite is particularly distinct, and it does not have like multiple. There's not multiple different Fortnites. It's all Fortnite, but the game continues to grow and evolve over time, seasonally and things like this. It's very different to Blizzard's craft games, where there was Warcraft, then Warcraft 2, then 3, then expansions, and then World of Warcraft, and then every expansion prior. Then, like Hearts of the Storm was a different game with that franchise. Counter Strike basically saying like different versions of the same game, but it's still effectively still the Counter Strike franchise. In terms of developers and publishers who make elite games, these guys kind of tend to crop up the most, along with Blizzard and Valve, obviously. However, like Nintendo is seemingly missing. Where they come into the picture is in these non-traditional forms of play. Like speedrunning isn't a great example of potential elite gameplay. So Multiverses, basically, I'm not sure about, but it's a brawl. It's a brawl fighting game. So we have this kind of Pokemon like strategic turn-based game. Then we have this Fortnite battle royale third-person competitive game, which I think has a mode that's still in the Olympics or welcome in the Olympics. I'll have to confirm that though. Then we have like our fighting brawl type games, all our MMO type games, and then a different type of face-off type game. No League of Legends, things like this. It's tricky, right? What I need to do is be able to say, like, these are the 5 games. We're going to be talking about these 5 games, researching, playing these 5 games type of thing. However, we can't really know these 5 games without knowing and talking through the other type of games that are similar, to contextualize and to do comparative analysis. Hades isn't even in here, for example. So I probably should chuck that in there. So we're at kind of like 6 at the minute. But if we're not going to do platforms, right, maybe we can just do like types of game. So for like Pokemon, it's like a turn strat. I'm just going to say like collect game. And this one is a Royale custom game. And the other one is a fight game. And this one is an MMO co-op PvP game. And the other one is like strict shoot. It's just like a strict shooter. And then Hades is like it's our rogue RNG. Which, as a distinction is still kind of weak. But basically, when my supervisor said to me, effectively, pick the games and then tell me about the games, my challenge is to pick the games that are going to allow me to talk about as many other games as possible, right? So by picking these franchises and these type of games, I can have a section in the PhD where I acknowledge all the various other types of games and explain how and why they're not the focal point, but how and why they're worthy of further analysis by myself and others. We're just trying to continue to narrow this down, and ideally I'll have this narrowed down by next week. So that way I can write a whole bunch of stuff that we need, right? So if we pull up the confirmation of candidature, let's just get word out really quickly. Is this, yeah, this is the latest one. In this literature and games review section, it was always meant to be 2,000 words for the purposes of the confirmation of candidature. But I realize now that there isn't enough talk about the games. These people don't know anything about anything, let alone what I do. So it really needs to be very simple. When we were following the guidance on this, this was all written by Tara, and her vision that what happens at Charles Darwin will be on the same measurement as PhDs globally, right? So I guess they had like really high hopes. For me, I know I'm a world class person, so I'm going to do world class work the best I can with what I can, with what's made available to me, even if it's nothing at all, right? Even if I have to do this for the next 3 years and I make not even a single dollar, I'm still going to finish. It's all on the internet. Yippee. The skeleton outline. I feel like once we have this locked in and then we write that section, 1,000 words on the games, and then 1,000 words about the state of the literature in game studies and how my work kind of slots in, we will be able to progress to the skeleton outline, which I have one written up in Notion. However, we're a long way from taking that and putting it into a Word document and then filling it in, because of how the PhD, my PhD being an artifact exegesis thesis, has a lot of different components that are all going to come together. And, that's why we have the whole project timeline. But this is here so that way I can see in my own mind the sort of scaffold, what we need. This core literature and all this stuff, right? And in particular, these things here. I feel like some of this stuff, and in conjunction, Huizinga's class-based gaming is a historical concept and idea, probably more of a sociological one. And to be fair, there's probably going to be cultural, anthropological things to ask as well. But in my conversations with ChatGPT seemed to indicate that there was a class-based distinction on gaming back in the 19th century, as well as in the 20th century. I'm not trying to do any kind of like Marxist or critical study here of gaming and game studies. However, just on the point that based on class distinctions, you're going to have different games and different ways of play. I feel like we can see this type of thing in game design and direction, particularly with free-to-play games and play-to-win games. So, hunting for whales, as well as we know that like people who at the minute, either due to their negative economic circumstances, so they play games, right? So let's just say if you were a multimillionaire and you were killing it every day, I don't really know if you would game all the time, right? Unless you were an outlier. I feel like most people in that societal segment are going to be having many pressures and many directions and many things to which they can apply their attention to, which would be equally as satisfying than as gaming, right? And many different types of games. But basically, on the class-based gaming, everything I've spoken, everything I've spoken about is still too narrow and too silly. It's almost the equivalent of and this is not a negative thing I'm saying, but I'm saying focusing on economic distinctions is effectively the same as focusing on gender distinctions in gaming. Both important, both have a time and a place. But these things are not what I'm actually hinting at. So with the setup done, I can say the thing that I'm hinting at isn't necessarily class-based gaming, but I have like a background in international sociology, is what the British like to call it. So this kind of indicates to me, if you can have gender-based gaming, economic class-based gaming, then there would be other societal stratifications that exist which have their own types of games and types of gaming. And I know in my lived experience of this, I've found that notion to be true because I've done games in the national security setting that are unlike any type of game that I play regularly, that if you go on Twitter or LinkedIn and you look at esports or elite gaming, is nothing like that, right? Absolutely nothing like that. You take battle-hardened soldiers playing shooting games in their simulators against Fortnite. It's so silly. Fortnite PC, you can play Fortnite on like a $200 Xbox or less. You can play it on your mobile phone. You know what I mean? The military defense game costs, it's astronomical. And then the companies that make them are simulation companies, not gaming companies. Anyway, like without digressing too much, right? Because I only want to just keep it easy breezy. There is one other side quest that I'm interested in. And so I'm going to put it here as side quest. So, like, you know, I have a background in cybersecurity. I don't do it anymore. Okay. But I kind of am interested in the security of video games, but I'm not interested in the security of video games from the prototypical information technology or information systems point of view, right? So, like, someone like me is trained to be an enterprise architect. I could think about Sony as a company that's publicly traded. The entirety of their infrastructure, the entirety, right down to why they choose what they choose in their consoles or in their controllers or whatever, right? Typical cybersecurity is just going to be like, how do you stop a hack or consumer data getting out, or, you know, we don't want GTA 6 to be leaked. All this kind of stuff. That's lame. I don't care about that. I don't care about any of that. The more you know about it, the more of a whole smokes and mirrors kind of situation cybersecurity becomes. What I'm kind of interested in is just novel things from my own childhood. For example, video game piracy, hacking video games, and subsequently anti-cheat systems. These are all kind of a lot more interesting to me. So, like, when I think about Hades, right? Let me turn the console on and then pull up the game. I think about how hard it is for me to get a sub 10-minute time. And then I think about how people can get like a 4 or 5 minute time. And I'm not saying they're cheating, but what I am saying is I am interested in the whole hacking and cheating aspect that surround video games. Why? Because in the world of the Olympics and elite sportsmanship, cheaters are very real. Some of it could even be your greatest hero. Could be someone who is doping or cheating or doing something to get an edge, right? It could be anything from whoa. Just a second, sorry. It could be anything like custom firmware on a controller, or there was a famous streamer. She allegedly had someone else play all the video games and do all the incredible feats of gaming. Made it look like they were the one to do it, right? And then they sold the show as if that was real when it was fictional. And that's, as a digression, that's this kind of really quasi-difficult grey area of streaming and content production today. Because you have all these, you have an audience that, I'm just going to say 1/3 are immature, 1/3 their brains are still like, they're mature, but their brains aren't finalized yet. I'm talking like 21 to 24. And then everyone else who's kind of like slipping through. Which I know is rough as a thing to say about enjoyers of live streamed content, and in particular video game live streamed content. I've lost my train of thought. But getting back into this game of Hades, right? All I'm trying to say is that I'm interested in how people cheat. Right? So my side quest, if I was to have one, because I do have all this knowledge about that, is about like cheating and anti-cheat and piracy. I suppose you could include leaks and things like that too, right? I suppose you could. I remember there was like, in my PhD, let's do walking cam, right? In my PhD, when I was starting, I was trying to get some money, right? Because I was, like I said, they shook my hand and they said, scholarship's yours, all this stuff. So when I didn't get one, I was confused. I saw that there was an opportunity to make an amendment to my research to include a cybersecurity component, to introduce another professor, cybersecurity professor, do the same project as I am, but write an additional chapter talking about cheating, anti-cheat, piracy, or whatever it is that we determined with the faculty would be of interest to them that they could successfully supervise. Anyway, it turns out that if I had pursued that option, my research would not be in arts, in media and communications. It would be in a different faculty, IT and engineering, and it would be in cybersecurity. It wouldn't even be in video games, right? So I'd still be a cybersecurity expert, and that's not something that I'm trying to do anymore. I'm trying to do something else, right? You can't help the fact that you are what you are, but I'm trying to do something different. You know what I mean? Like, I can't help the fact that I'm handsome either, but I'm just trying to do something different. Now, it turns out that if I had gone down that route, yes, I would have got a scholarship, but the scholarship I would be getting is not mine. Actually, it's one of 2 scholarships that are earmarked for new students. I just wanted, and what I thought was, if I changed my project, I would get a scholarship. I would get my original scholarship because I was told that I would get one. There was one for me. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, I didn't get it this way, but mine is still there. How about if I do it like this? I'll do even more work, I can go and get mine. And then it was kind of revealed to me that actually you're going to be starting the entire PhD enrollment process again, and then you'll be evaluated against, I don't know, a woman from Pakistan and this guy from Dubai, who have an elite glowing education from universities in India. And how am I supposed to compete as a graduate from the University of Melbourne and the Australian National University? How? I have no idea. That's a joke. The point being, though, is that I would be taking someone else's life-changing opportunity. I don't want to take someone else's life-changing opportunity. I just want my one, thanks. So where is it? Anyway, it turns out that there never was one. You know what I mean? Because if there was, I would have it. So someone said that there was, but I guess they were wrong. And that's okay. We're all wrong sometimes. So that's hence me applying for the scholarship independently to see if I can go and get mine without taking someone else's. And how could you do that? Just be so selfless isn't the right word. I do have a motivation. This is my local university, this is my town. So if we get 2 more PhD people, I'm already here. I've already started. I can survive on no money. Now there will be 3 PhDs from this university rather than just 2. Me with money and a random. I'd rather 2 randoms and poverty gas just getting through. Right? And don't worry about me. I'm fine. So this is kind of the update at this point. I've got things coming up, but it's all slowly. To be honest, I just feel like doing whatever the requirement is and the bare minimum for that requirement. I know that kind of sounds bad, right? Bare minimum or whatever. But hear me out, right? If the bare minimum is filet mignon, then that's what we're cooking. I ain't going to cook you a tomahawk. You didn't ask for it. So here's your filet. I'm just giving you what you asked for. And then this way, because I guess we're going to find out in the next 2 weeks when we find out if we get a stipend or not, or a scholarship or not. Then if we do, I know I'm going to feel more motivated to do more work. And if I don't, then I know that it's time to do the work regardless, right? So I would rather start now and cruise rather than try really, really hard and get told no and have the wind taken out of your sails that way. Because that's exactly what happened the first go around, right? All this stuff, the university was putting out videos. The time just before you start and the time just as you start, most critical window for PhD success. And what did they do to me? Lie and bamboozle me. I should fail, but I don't. I'm a winner. So it doesn't matter how hard it is, I'm going to get through. Kind of reminds me of Amir Satfat's post saying that statistically, if you want a job in video games at the moment, global stats say that you only have a 5% chance for every listing of getting that job. And everyone was crying about it. And I just said 5% is all I need. That's it. 5% is an amazing statistic. I've applied for things where it's like winning the lottery. You know what I mean? To get in. And some lotteries I've even won. So 5%, I can keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying. And you know why? Because when you do the thing, when you are the thing, that's what you do. You do it, right? So if the odds are low, doesn't matter because you're doing it anyway. At least there's a reward for you. The very last thing that I need to touch on is there is currently no progress on the Games and Play Lab at Charles Darwin University. But that said, though, I do have a plan. I am cooking on that front. I've got like a sequence of activities that we're going to undertake, a staged execution to try get interest and to see if we can make it real. I'm not saying that I would create like a bachelor's of gaming or whatever, but what I am saying is that I wouldn't mind doing some video games research in a more official capacity at this university, considering how like I'm occasional faculty as an adjunct. Like I get my contracts to come in and do what I need to do and lecture when I need a lecture and all this stuff. If I was to run overtime on this update, then I would say I want to talk about how in the stream we were talking, I think it was Subpar, it was either Subpar or Hatto or somebody, one of the regulars was saying about how Fortnite was made in a small